Unbroken. Laura Hillenbrand. Book Summary. Part 1. Louie's Youth and Young Adulthood in Torrance, California. Chapters 1-5 introduce an average boy who would become a remarkable man. Born in 1917, Louie Zamperini was the child of Italian immigrants. Growing up in Torrance amidst poverty and anti-Italian bias, Louie got in the habit of running outside the law. He started smoking when he was 5 years old and drinking when he was 8. He stole anything he wanted, mostly food, money, and whatever else he could find. He ran small scams and vandalized property. Pete, Louie's older brother, became concerned. Seeing Louie's talent for running away after a crime, Pete forced Louie to join the track and field team at school. Louie excelled and soon gave up his delinquent exploits in favor of running circles around a track. Nicknamed the Torrance Torado, he became a high school phenomenon and eventually earned a spot on the U.S. Olympic team. He competed alongside Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics in Germany and planned to compete again in the 1940 Olympics scheduled for Tokyo, Japan. However, when World War II started, Louie found himself training to be a bombardier in the Army Air Corps of the United States instead of training to be a track star. Part 2. Louie's military career as a bombardier. Chapters 6-11 relate the beginnings of Louie's World War II career in the American military. In September 1941, Louie was drafted and eventually assigned to the Army Air Corps. He trained as a bombardier, flying in the clunky but powerful B-24 Liberator planes. Stationed in Oahu, Hawaii, Louie and his crewmates joined in the fight against Japan that was taking place all across the Pacific Ocean, referred to as the Pacific Theater. At first, Louie and his crew passed idle days waiting for battle. Then, on December 23, 1942, they took part in the bombing of a Japanese base on the island of Wake Atoll. The mission was successful. Over the next few weeks, Louie watched the machinations of war take the lives of other Air Corpsmen, sometimes through battle, sometimes through mechanical failures. He and his crewmates made other dangerous bombing raids over Pacific Islands. Japanese bombers also attacked an American base on an island where he was stationed. Yet through it all, Louie survived. Then one peaceful day, Louie and his crew were called to complete a search and rescue mission. Mechanical failure struck. Louie's plane crashed somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Part 3. Louie's harrowing experience as an ocean castaway. Chapters 12-17 describe the days that Louie spent adrift, trying to survive in the vast Pacific Ocean. When his B-24 bomber crashed into the sea on May 27, 1943, only 3 men survived: Louie, his pilot Russell Allen Phil Phillips, and tail gunner Francis McNamara. Over the next 46 days, they struggled to survive in 2 small, inflatable rafts while drifting across miles and miles of water. Their first setback came the first night. Mac, in a fit of panic, ate all of the nutritional chocolate squares meant to keep the 3 men alive for days. Almost immediately, they were out of food and starving to death. Next they faced the blistering heat of day and the shivering cold of night. As the men grew weaker and weaker, schools of sharks regularly stalked them beside their rafts. At one point, after they'd drifted into Japanese waters, a Japanese warplane strafed them with bullets, trying repeatedly to kill them. Mac eventually succumbed to deprivation and illness and was buried at sea. Louie and Phil survived. At last they spotted land, only to find it overrun with Japanese troops. On July 13, 1943, Louie and Phil were taken captive on Kwajalein Island. Part 4. Louie's traumatic years as a prisoner of war. Chapters 18-33 comprise the bulk of Hillenbrand's biography and deal specifically with the harsh years Louie Zamperini spent in various POW camps in Japanese territories. On Kwajalein Island, Louie was imprisoned in a solitary, dirty, wooden cell infested with maggots, flies, and mosquitoes. He was deprived of food, water, and medical care. He was also beaten, interrogated, and routinely humiliated, all a foretaste of what his life would be like over the next 2 years. Lowy was transferred among POW camps, but his time spent under the sadistic corporal, later Sergeant, Matsuhiro Watanabe was the worst. Nicknamed the Bird, this Japanese guard was Lowy's personal tormentor at both the Amori and Naoetsu POW camps on mainland Japan. He beat Lowy daily, sometimes with his fists, sometimes with his belt, often with his kendo stick. The Bird starved Lowy and all of the prisoners. He practiced ritual humiliation on Lowy and the others, even making them lay face down in human excrement. And he used Lowy and the others as slave labor for Japan's war machine. When the Allies defeated Japan, the Bird disappeared, hiding to avoid punishment as a war criminal. Part 5. Lowy's Life in Freedom After World War II. Chapters 34-39 sum up Lowy's experiences back in the United States following America's victory in World War II. After Lowy was freed from captivity in Japan, he returned to California and tried to resume his life. He met and married Cynthia Applewhite, a young girl from a privileged upbringing. He fell into alcoholism and wrestled with untreated PTSD. He struggled financially. He had near-constant nightmares about his time as a POW, waking once to find himself strangling his pregnant wife because he had dreamed she was the Bird. His marriage collapsed. In September 1949, Cynthia convinced Lowy to attend a Billy Graham crusade in Los Angeles. Lowy resisted, but he went, and went again. Finally Lowy responded to Graham's preaching and committed himself to Jesus. His life changed completely. Lowy quit drinking, reconciled with his wife, and began the process of forgiving his captors. He dedicated his life to nonprofit work helping at-risk boys and, by all accounts, lived relatively happily for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, in Japan, the Bird escaped punishment by staying hidden for several years, until all war criminals were pardoned as part of post-war efforts by the United States. Matsuhiro Watanabe lived a long life, married, had 2 children, made a fortune running an insurance agency in Tokyo, and kept a vacation home on Australia's Gold Coast.